See these stunning UI animations that look so clean, sharp, and crisp? Well, today I'm going to give you a complete beginner's guide to everything you need to know about creating high-quality UI animations inside of After Effects. And if you don't know much about After Effects or you're completely new to video editing, don't worry. This is a beginner-friendly masterclass, meaning I'll be teaching you everything from zero so that any editor can follow along. And trust me, I've been teaching editors how to edit for almost 2 years now, and we've seen some beginners create some amazing animations, so I'm pretty sure I can teach you these animations as well. Now, in order to give you the most beginner-friendly masterclass on UI animations, first I'll show you the 3-phase framework to creating any UI animation on the planet: design, animation, and camera. And at the end, we'll dive into After Effects and create a high-quality Devin Jatho styled UI animation from scratch. So get ready for the complete beginner's guide to creating stunning UI animations inside of After Effects. Let's dive right in. To better understand UI animations inside of After Effects, let's break down how they are made. Whenever you see any stunning UI animation, I need you to think of 3 things. Number 1 is the UI design. It's the elements, the text, the colors, the icons that all come together to form the design of the UI. Number 2 is the UI animation. The actual animation that is happening using these layers, the text layers, the shape layers, and everything. And number 3 is the movement. The camera movement that helps the viewer visualize and see the animation that is happening. All 3 of these phases come together to create stunning UI animations. So how do we as video editors go about these 3 phases to create UI animations? Let me show you. Starting with phase 1, the UI design. The objective of this phase is to break down the UI into individual elements so that we can control and animate each one for phase 2. And phase 1 is actually the most difficult phase. In order to break down this entire UI into different individual elements, there are 2 main methods to go about this. Method A is the slower method that gives you control over everything, which is essentially using the UI as a reference and creating individual layers inside of After Effects. For the background, you can use a solid layer with the color set. For any shapes, you can use a shape layer with a similar color, and for any text, you can use a text layer with the right font and size, and for icons, you simply import them from third-party websites like Flat Icon. And method B is the faster method, which gives you less control, which is where you import the whole UI as a screenshot, and then you simply mask out certain sections. You first mask out a specific section, and then duplicate the layer, and then move the mask to the next section, and finally, after doing this to each section, you can add a solid layer and use the same color for the background. This gives you the same individual assets to control. However, these are screenshots at the end of the day, which means A, if you zoom in too far, you will see a drop in quality, and B, you unfortunately don't have as much control over them. But either way, whichever method you do decide to go with, once the UI design is complete, you can move on to phase 2. The animation. Now, phase 2 is all about taking these different UI elements and animating them. And for starters, this is where you ask yourself, what do I want this UI animation to actually do? For example, if I wanted to simulate the user clicking the like button, I need to animate my like icon clicking and then have it fill with this color here. Or if, for example, I wanted to animate the comment section opening, I need the comment icon to simulate a click by animating it clicking, and then I need a rounded UI to come in from the bottom of the screen, and then I need to create the same UI for the comment section. This is the phase where you use individual layers to animate them into the animation you want to make. And after creating the UI design in phase 1 and animating it in phase 2, we finish off with the camera in phase 3. To finish this UI animation, you need to make the viewer feel like they're going through this animation step by step. This is where you add a camera that flies through your animation. And there are 2 general ways of doing this. First is the transform method. If your scene is all in one frame and you don't need to move out of the frame and you want to keep everything in 2D, just add an adjustment layer, add the transform tool, and simply manipulate the scale and position to animate a movement and zoom around your scene. This is alright, but it's not my favorite way of doing things as it really limits you. What I prefer doing is the 3D camera method, by changing everything into a 3D layer, which makes this 3D UI in a 3D space. Then we add a 3D camera and simply move our camera around freely wherever we want. This always gives you better results and less headache as you can control pretty much everything. So remember, by following this 3-phase method, you can pretty much create any UI animation out there. Simply start by designing the UI you want, then add the animations which need to happen, and finish it off with a camera movement to guide the viewer. Notice how a complex editing concept like this 3-phase system all of a sudden makes sense when broken down step by step. And if as an editor you've been finding video editing hard to learn, perhaps you feel overwhelmed by how many editing styles there are, and you're not sure where to get started on learning stuff like this, I have the perfect solution for you. We've built a step-by-step beginner-friendly program that teaches video editors how to edit the viral editing styles of 2025. And they went from editing like this to editing like this in less than 60 days, and we could do the same for you. How? Simple. First, we make sure you have an in-depth understanding of the editing programs with our Premiere Pro and After Effects masterclasses. And second, we teach you the viral editing styles of 2025. But we don't just teach you a few animations, we teach you how to create these styles and think like video editors. Take our Devin Jatho masterclass for example. Instead of just showing you a few animations, we break it down. Plan, text styles, hook animations, UI animations, selector animations, and at the end we show you how to create a complete Devin Jatho video from scratch. And this is how, using our courses, editors have been able to go from complete beginners to creating stunning animations in just 60 days. And they're making so much money with video editing. Inside Ultimate Editors, you'll get complete masterclasses on Premiere Pro and After Effects, 6 in-depth viral editing style masterclasses made for beginners, a client acquisition masterclass, 3 weekly coaching calls, 24/7 live community support, and a monthly editing competition where you can win up to $1,000 in prizes. This is the perfect community to be in if you want to become a viral editor and start making money with video editing. Hundreds of editors have already joined Ultimate Editors and gone from complete beginners to creating stunning animations in just 60 days. So what's stopping you from becoming the next viral editor? Join Ultimate Editors, the link is going to be down below. Alright, with the 3 phases broken down, let's show you how we can use this 3-phase system to create a stunning Devin Jatho styled UI animation. And in the rest of the video, you're about to see how I'm going to break down this complete UI animation so that even beginners can understand how it's made. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Before we begin any animation, let's first start by planning it. Here is what the script looks like. My plan for this one was, as I was saying, after studying personal brands, I want to create an animation of my social page on Instagram, all animating in. The next statement I say is one specific reel stood out, which is where I'll zoom into a reel on my brand page and highlight it. The statement following this is the analytics on this reel were unique, which is where I'll create my own UI boxes that show the analytics. And finally, when I say, and when graphed, they flew off the charts, I'll create my own graph UI that shows an increasing graph. And with this plan in mind, let's get to work. Let's get started with phase 1, the design, by putting together the Instagram UI. For this, I'm going to be using the fast method. And before we do anything, let's start by adding a background. We first add in a solid layer and use the fill effect, which allows us to change the color of our background and simply set it to the same black as Instagram. After putting the screenshot up here, now it's time to split our UI. There are 4 main sections in this UI: the profile picture, the text and bio, the story highlights, and the icons here. So first, I'm going to select this rectangle tool and use it to draw a mask around my profile picture and rename the layer to profile picture. Then just duplicate our layer, but go into the layer properties and delete my current mask so that we can simply create a new mask around my second section and rename it to text. Let's do this again, duplicate it, delete the mask, and add a mask on our stories this time. Then one last time, duplicate it, delete the mask, and add a mask around our icons. And by doing this, we'll have a split UI where we can control each section on its own. And now with the UI design complete, we can move on to phase 2, which is creating the animations. Now real quick, before we start creating the animations, we're about to get into some pretty complex stuff. And I know some of you guys are going to find this difficult, so we've put together a few free beginner courses on animating in After Effects. If you want to learn keyframes, how the speed graph works, how the value graphs work, and animation timing, check it out. If you're a beginner, this is the perfect way to dip your toes in the water and explore animating in After Effects. You can find these completely free courses linked down below, but let's go ahead and get back to the video. The first animation I'm going to create is animating all of my individual Instagram UI, popping in with a fade in. To do this, we're going to get started by adding in our transform effect to this layer. Then I'll need to create a pop-in animation using my position. So we add a keyframe for the current position at 1 second, which will determine where my animation ends. And then I move back and move this layer to the left. This will start the layer off to the left. Now we need to make this animation smoother by selecting it, opening the graph editor, and instead of this boring robotic animation, we're going to drag our slider back here to start this quick and then slow it down. This will make our pop-in animation look like this. Now as it pops in, I'm also going to need it to fade in. So I'm going to keyframe my opacity at 100% and move it to the end of the animation and simply start my animation at 0%. And as a final extra detail, let's have it blur in with the opacity. We add in our Gaussian blur, increase it up to 20, add a keyframe for it at 20 and move that to the beginning, and simply end the blur at 0. And we get this nice and simple pop-in animation. Again, if you find this stuff a bit difficult, we've put together these free basic animation courses for you guys. You can find them down in the link below. Now here's the best part. We've made this whole animation using the effects in our effects panel. So now that we have to add this animation to the rest of the UI elements, all that we have to do is simply copy these 2 effects from here and paste them on the other layers. And our animation is going to automatically be applied to other layers. Now when you do paste it, it will start the animation based on where your playhead is, so make sure to realign the keyframes. And we also want our second layer to start from the right side instead. So we just change this first position keyframe, which determines where our animation starts from, to the right side. And there we go. Now again, for the story highlights, we'll just paste our two effects on here as well, but this time we can just leave it starting from the left. And finally, for these icons here, we're also going to paste our effects on here too, but just change the original position to the bottom. And now all our elements animate into the screen at different rates. One final tip I have is instead of everything animating at the same time, simply delay the layers one after another. Now that our Instagram UI animates into the screen, we just need the rest of the reels to also animate into the scene, which is actually really easy. Let's go back to our personal brand, take a screenshot of the first 6 reels and bring it into After Effects. Then we scale it down according to this Instagram UI we built out, and now we'll need to mask each reel out. We'll take our pen tool, which allows us to create custom masks. We zoom into here and add a point up here, add a point to the right, a point down here, and a point here to end it. And there we go, reel 1 is complete. Now we just duplicate the layer, and to select our second reel, we just select the mask path, select all 4 points, hold down shift, and move them to the right. I won't bore you with this process any longer, let's just do the same thing to the remaining reels. And finally, to have them animate in, we're just gonna copy the animation we made for this icon pop up here, and I'll select all of these reels and paste them on here. Now, how do we make this look better? Just make sure that they start one after the other, continuing the flow from the beginning of the animation. And there we go, phase 2 is complete. And usually we would move into phase 3, adding in the camera, but since this animation has a few more animating parts, we'll leave the camera till the end so it doesn't get any more confusing for you guys. And now that part 1 of this animation is complete, let's dive into part 2, where we're going to zoom into this reel over here. To do this, it's really simple. We won't need to worry about phase 1 as the design is already here. Let's just worry about phase 2, animating. First, I need all these reels except this one to get darker so that we can only see the main reel. All I'm going to do is add an adjustment layer and add in the hue and saturation effect, which allows us to control the brightness and color of our layer. Knowing I start talking about my one reel at the 2-second mark, I'll add a keyframe here for my channel range, and then I move forward and simply darken them by -50 and desaturate them by like -40. This will animate the reels getting darker. Now, to be able to see our reel, we're going to go ahead and select our ellipse tool and mask our reel here, and then just invert our mask, which applies the effects to everything else, and then increase the feather by 150 to smoothen the edges. And the last part of this animation is to zoom into this reel here and start building our UI. And an easy way to do this is to simply turn all of your UI layers into a 3D scene and then use a 3D camera to move wherever you want on your 3D scene. So we're going to go ahead and select all of our layers except our background layer and click on this 3D cube to turn them into a 3D scene. And now that our UI exists in a 3D space, we can use our dolly tool to zoom in without losing any of the quality. And now I can zoom in and build out my scene as I want. Now, 3D in After Effects is a very confusing and complex topic. If you're struggling to understand it, I've made multiple step-by-step breakdowns of the 3D elements inside of After Effects. And that is, of course, just one course of the many courses you can get access to inside of Ultimate Editors. The link is going to be down below. Now, once we start this next scene, I want everything to fade out except our main reel. So we select all the layers, click on T, keyframe their current opacity, move forward, and have it fade out to 0. And with this done, it's time to begin our third animation where we will zoom into this reel and have our analytics come up. To create our zoom in, we're just going to wait till phase 3, where we're actually going to use the camera to make the zoom in. But let's work on our UI animation, starting with phase 1, designing the UI. Let's start by adding in a shape layer and drawing out a simple rectangle like so, then just increase the roundness to something like 35. Just as a reminder, we are working in a 3D scene and this is a 2D layer. When we click on the cube, it's going to turn it into a 3D layer and it's going to disappear. This is because it's snapping back to the center of our 3D space, whereas we're only seeing one small section of our animation. So we'll need to bring it back to here. And keep in mind, you'll have to do this to every layer that you make from now on. But let's go ahead and design our UI. First, we click on Fill and use the linear gradient. Then let's make our first color a light gray and our second color a dark blue. Then let's click on our shape so that we can see these nodes and then just place them like so. After playing around with the colors, we will end up with this. I do also want to add a stroke, so we'll click on our stroke and set the mode to solid color and increase it to 5 pixels, then just make the color a dark gray. And lastly, I'm going to finish things off with an inner shadow. To do this, just right click and click on layer styles, add an inner glow, set the color to black, which won't be visible, so change the blending mode to normal and decrease the opacity to 25. Now this looks absolutely beautiful, but that background is really sticking out. So let's go ahead and transition into a new background. We start by adding in a solid layer, and don't forget to turn it into a 3D layer, then add a gradient ramp, set the top point to black and the bottom point to a gray blue, and then just change change the blending mode to screen, which will only make our light values visible. And by scaling this up, we get a simple background. And now to have it transition in, let's just animate it moving in from the bottom, like so. Nice and simple. The final thing I want to do is create a casted shadow on this UI box. To do this, just duplicate your UI shape, remove all of the effects so that it's just a black box, and add the CC radial fast blur effect. Place it here and increase the amount, and place your layer behind the main UI. Alright, the last part of this UI is the text, so let's go ahead and add in a text layer, write out the word engagement, set it to fill, and use our SFUI display font. Scale it down and place it here, and use a light gray color. To be fair, this UI is too big, so let's scale it down to 25 and place it here, and simply scale the text down with it. Now once design is done, it's time for phase 2, the animations. And having multiple layers makes this very complex. So let's go ahead and add in a null object and simply parent all of these layers to it. Now our null object controls our UI. So we'll move our playhead forward, keyframe the current position, move back, and start it slightly lower. Then we just gotta make it start quick and then slow down in the speed graph. And we'll also just top it off with an opacity fade in by keyframing the current opacity and then starting it at 0% to fade it in. And I'm just gonna color these layers as brown so that we can see them. Once we have the design and the animation, let's duplicate it. Select all of your layers, click on Ctrl D, and move them up to the top. For our second UI, I'll click on A to bring up my anchor point and simply move it to the right here. Then change your text to retention, and there you go. Let's duplicate it one more time, move the UI to the bottom and write out the word like rate, and finally duplicate it one more time and write out the word total shares. Now we've got 4 UI layers with animations and everything. Finally, we just gotta make sure that these start sequentially, which makes these animations way better. And with this third part of the animation complete, it's finally time to move on to the final part, which is the graph animation at the end. Let's start by moving down in our 3D scene here so that we can continue our animation, and first we gotta build the graph UI. We add a shape layer, draw a simple square, make it 3D, bring it back to the scene, and give it a little roundness. Now to go ahead and design this, we're going to add in a 4-color gradient and use one color as a dark blue, then simply alternate between lighter and darker blues. Let's go ahead and finish this off with a casted shadow. Duplicate your main shape, remove the 4-color gradient, add a radial fast blur and increase the amount, and put your UI under the main shape. Alright, UI is done, let's work on the text. Duplicate the text layer we made for the UI animation and bring it up here. Write out the word average revenue and place it here. Now for the main value, duplicate the text, write a large sum of money, and use a bolder font and scale it up and place it here. Lastly, to make it pop, we're going to go ahead and use the same special effect we made for Dev and Jatho, which is just a 4-color gradient and a light sweep, and add it here. UI is built, text is done, let's get to work on the graph. First, we're gonna need a bottom line. So let's go ahead and add a shape layer and use the pen tool while holding down shift to draw a simple line. Make the stroke 2 for now. And now for our actual graph line, add in another shape layer. Use the pen tool to start a point here and curve the line upwards like so. Set the stroke to 4, and to color it, add a 4-color gradient, scatter the points like so, and alternate between blue and white colors. And top it off with a deep glow at 0.4 exposure. Now to animate the line drawing out, all we have to do is click on this play button here and add the trim paths function. Go to the beginning and keyframe the end at 0, go to the end and increase it to 100%, and simply smoothen it out in the speed graph. And the last piece is this circle which pops in and animates with the line. To do this, we add a shape layer and then draw a circle with our ellipse tool and add the 4-color gradient to it. Use a similar blue but a different shade so that we can see it, and scale it down to the right size. And now to animate this, go over here to where the line animation begins and add a position keyframe to the ball here. Then go to where the line animation finishes and end the ball there. Finally, select your pen tool and add a point in the path and bend it down like so. The path is good, but the speed is off. So in our speed graph, we're going to try to match the speed of the line animation using the graph, and finish things off with a deep glow to the circle. And now that our graph animation is complete, it's time to animate it coming in. First, let's take the base UI, keyframe its position, move back and start it lower. Make sure to start it fast and then slow it down in the speed graph. And of course, add a keyframe for the opacity ending at 100% and starting at 0. And now that the base UI animation is done, let's work on the text. Start by keyframing the current position, but start it off to the left side and have it pop in quickly. Then also add your opacity fade in keyframes and simply copy and paste the effects on your second text. As for timing, make sure your base UI starts first, then the text, then your line and ball animation. And finally, all 4 animation parts are complete. We've designed all 4 UI animations and animated them, And now it's time for the final part, which is adding in the camera. Let's go ahead and right click and add a camera layer by making sure it's a one node camera. To animate this, we add a keyframe for the current position. And first, I want my camera to slightly zoom out the top. Then within the first second, I'm going to want it to move down to my Instagram page. So I move my playhead and simply move my camera down here. Once this darkening happens, we begin the new animation at this point. So we add a new keyframe and then we move forward and simply zoom in all the way to the real once everything fades out. And right before our engagement animation, we finally add a keyframe, and as the UI is popping up, we'll go ahead and have the camera move down to it. And finally, before our graph animation, we add a keyframe, and as the graph animation is happening, we're going to pan the camera down to the graph UI. And of course, go into your speed graph and play around with the speed. The trick here is to keep it flowing and make sure every movement starts slow and ends slow so that the movements can actually flow together. And after this is done, phase 1 is complete. The UI has been designed. And phase 2 is complete. The UI has been animated. And phase 3 complete. The camera has been added. And after following our 3-phase system, this is the final stunning UI animation which we end up with. Now, if you want to create any UI animation out there, don't forget, just follow this 3-phase process. Design, animate, and camera. And if I helped you learn UI animations today, do me a favor, either like the video or let me know down in the comments below. Thanks a lot for watching all the way till the end, guys. God bless each and every single one of you. And stay tuned for more amazing editing tutorials like this one. But in the meantime, you can actually check out one of these two, which are videos just as good as the one here, if not any better. See you guys in the next video.